Hi, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner.
And our dog, Betty White.
Your hosts of the Arner Adventures podcast.
Could we have named it something more creative? Probably. But it's the name of our blog. It's our last name. We're on an adventure. Yada, yada, yada. After owning our own business, working 24/7.
And don't forget a mental breakdown in between.
We made a lifestyle change and decided to make the most out of life.
We sold our house, most of our belongings, downsized, and moved to the coast.
We live life minimally, but fully.
We live each day as an adventure.
This show will help you learn how to live life more fully, with more intention, by experiencing more, and with less stuff.
We'll talk about our own experiences, interview others who have much to share by creating a spark in our lives.
Some days we'll share real-life ongoings of what we're going through, and others will talk about our favorite flavor of waffle.
Come join our adventure.
It's the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Jerry.
Betty White is sitting here beside us, and we are back for episode 40 of the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Lordy. Our podcast is 40, y'all. What's up with that?
I mean, we are really moving along through this year.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Just consistent every week. I'm
every
proud
week.
of us.
Oh, me too. Me too. I can
Mhm.
remember when it was 5 or 10, and man, like all of a sudden, here we are.
I know. Well, today we have a Spark in Our Lives episode for you with someone whose story is so inspirational. We have these guests on as Spark in Our Lives because they're inspirational, but this guy, we are still riding high from his motivation, aren't we?
We are. But before we get to our guest, let's get to our review of the week.
Yeah, let's do.
Today's review comes from Crazy T83. Crazy T says, "This podcast makes me want to stand on my front porch and scream with delight."
Wow. Crazy T.
Crazy T. Wow, we've never heard anything quite like that.
We have not. You better watch out there, Crazy T, because you could get arrested for disorderly conduct or something like that.
With additional charges.
Right?
Yeah, but thank you for your support.
Thank you for your constant support, Crazy T. I mean, I just see that name everywhere.
I do too.
Well, if you all would like to help us by supporting this podcast, please head over to lovethepodcast.com/Arner Adventures and give us a review or a rating. You have no idea what it means for us to see those.
It really amps us up, sort of how Crazy T gets.
Wow, it does amp us up. Well, we want to make sure that we let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Southern Oak Artisan. Southern Oak Artisan makes 100% natural soy candles. Should there ever be any other candle than soy? Because we love our soy candles.
Oh no, there's no going back from the soy candles.
No, we have their candles all over our house. We love living by candles too. Now that the weather is getting cooler, it's ideal, especially, you don't have to use your electricity. It's a great sustainable way of living as well.
Oh yeah, you can feel the heat coming off of them. They do help.
They do.
Warm up the house. Their hand-poured candle is curated in only the highest quality ingredients. 100% natural soy and clean fragrance oils. Their scents are gentle rather than overwhelming, and they are non-toxic and won't tarnish the air you breathe like other candles.
I know. I can't even have candles here that aren't 100% soy.
No,
I mean, I just can't. And I may have talked about this in some blogs before, but I have asthma, so it also just messes with my breathing. It's just, and if you read about it, it's just not very clean at all.
And you can tell right away.
Yeah.
When you light one that's not soy.
And you can go to southernoakartisan.com and use code ADVENTURE for 10% off of your candle order. And we're going to link all of that for you in the show notes.
We are really appreciative to Southern Oak Artisan for their sponsorship of today's episode.
Definitely. Well, today's guest is a really interesting guy. Like we were saying, his name is Kevin Lowe. He woke one day at the age of 17 to live life as a blind man. It's just so inspirational, like we said, and we just can't wait to share it with you.
Are you ready to get to the conversation with Kevin?
I'm ready. Let's get to it.
Let's do it.
Well, guys, you know that we are always intrigued by mindset, especially someone who has resilience and always want to know where that comes from. And today's guest embodies resilience. When we read about Kevin Lowe, we knew that we had to have him as a guest on the podcast, and we were ecstatic when he said yes. Kevin Lowe is the host of his own podcast, The Lowdown with Kevin Lowe, and is a transformational life and business coach. But what makes Kevin truly unique is the way in which he sees the world. You see, at just 17 years old, Kevin awoke from surgery to be left completely blind. But guided by his faith and inspired by life itself, Kevin has never allowed the challenges he has endured to rob him of the opportunity to thrive in life. Kevin believes everything in this life happens for a reason, and a good reason at that. And this is true even after losing his ability to see. Ever since waking to find a world gone dark, Kevin has been inspiring and encouraging people from all walks of life by sharing his own story of rediscovering light, even in the midst of dark. Kevin, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, well, I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Ever since I read about your story, I was like, oh my gosh, we have to have him come on. And I hate to even say you made, and forgive the pun here, a dark situation light, but I just feel like anytime someone can sort of pivot, I mean, I feel like that's sort of a light term actually for a strong situation, but I'm always intrigued by mindset. And I feel like it's something that we talk about a lot on here, working on constantly is mindset. And when someone has the ability to be able to turn something like that could really have pulled many people into a really, really dark place, you not only just went, okay, yeah, I'll be okay. You turned it completely the other way and said, you know what? This life is going to be wonderful. And I'm also going to help other people realize how wonderful it is. So I'm so excited to dig into this.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Like I said, it is that's my whole thing. We none of us can control what happens in life, but we can control how we react to it. And for myself, when life is out of control, I go back to that as, well, what can I control? And that's how I react to it. So
I try to remember that all the time. Okay, what can you control? What can you control here? So if you don't mind me asking, and the reason I ask this is it's not evident to me anywhere, but I feel like I may have read it. And I also on your website see palm trees and a lot of things. Are you somewhere in a warm weather? Like, are you in Florida? Where are you located?
Yeah, I am. I'm in born and raised here in East Central Florida.
In Florida.
Yeah. Yes.
I was right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You are spot on. Yes.
Wow. I love Florida. Our goal is to at some point leave. We love Beaufort, and we live in Beaufort, North Carolina, and we love it, but we at some point want to be in Florida. I love Florida.
Well, tell you what, we can trade places, because being here all my life, I love Florida and I love everything it's about, except for the heat. And so I always joke and I say, I love my state, but the heat makes me feel as though it's one step closer to hell. And so I'm like, the older I get, the crankier I get with the heat. And I'm like, I really need to live somewhere where it's cooler.
Well, listen, I'm kind of the way about the old, like this past year, this is going to make me sound like a granny, but this past year, we moved to the coast because we're like, oh, great, it'll be so much warmer. I mean, look, it was 3 hours from where we live, but I'm like, it'll be so much warmer. But I walk my dog in the mornings, and when we would get back in the winter, I was like, my hands hurt, my joints hurt. I was like, no, winters are too cold here, even in North Carolina. I'm like, I need to go further south.
Yeah, yeah. We all want, but we don't have,
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I know somewhat about this story, but I can't wait for our listeners to hear it. When you were 17 years old, you became blind, and I would love it if you wouldn't mind sharing the story of how you became blind at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this was back in 2003. At the time I was a junior in high school, had just turned 17 years old, and was honestly living, kind of, you could say, my best life. Had finally fallen into that groove where school wasn't where school was no longer the worst thing in my life. Where
Right.
I had grown up as one of those kids who would rather be sick with the flu at home, half dying, than have to go to school. Well, suddenly come like junior year of high school, things kind of changed. And maybe that was partly to do with the fact that I'd finally found like this really awesome group of friends that I did stuff with outside of school. I had my dream truck. It was a forest green Ford F-150 4x4,
Yeah.
big raise. It was amazing. And so life was going good. And as I always say, it was going good until it wasn't.
Right.
And it wasn't came it was a Friday evening. We me, my mom, and my stepdad had taken our boat up the intercoastal waterway up to St. Augustine, Florida, where we were going to spend the weekend at a marina. And we had got all docked. This was one of my favorite boat trips that we would take. And so we get up there, we get all set in at the dock, everything's settled. And I'm sitting down in the cabin of the boat, and I'm flipping through a magazine when my mom comes down into the cabin and sits down across from me. And she tells me at that point that she hadn't told me, but she got a call from the doctor on her way home from work that day. And that call was the news with the results of the MRI. I had recently had an MRI done. I had went to a new pediatrician. That pediatrician looked at all of my symptoms. I was a little guy. Here I was 17 years old, had never been through puberty, had never really hit my growth spurt. I was only 5'3", this little kid. And so he had sent me to a specialist. That specialist sent me for an MRI. And so here I am in this dream destination up in St. Augustine, and my mom's telling me that the doctor called and the news was actually worse than they had expected. It was a brain tumor. It was, thankfully, it was not cancerous, but it was large. They compared it to the size of a plum. And this brain tumor was positioned right in the crosshairs of my optic nerve. It had completely encased my pituitary gland and was pressing against my carotid artery.
Oh, wow.
At the time that they discovered it, they gave me 6 months to live.
Oh, wow.
And so, of course, my mom didn't go into all of those details. All I knew was brain tumor. And I can remember getting out of the boat and just running up the dock, all the way up and up the stairs to the top of the marina. And I can remember just standing with my arms folded against the rail, looking out across the marina, just lost. So we thought that was the big dramatic news, that I had a brain tumor. But an hour from our home in Orlando, Florida, was the leading pediatric neurosurgeon in the country, an incredible guy. And he assured us, hey, he's like, it's okay. He's like, I do these all the time. We'll go in, we'll remove the tumor. Kevin will be back to school in approximately 3 to 4 weeks. Everything will be fine. For me at the time, the biggest deal to me was that he told me I couldn't ride my 4-wheeler for 6 months. And so of course, being a 17-year-old kid, that was a big deal to me.
Sure.
And so anyways, so here we have this life-changing situation, facing a brain tumor, literally facing my own mortality with it. If it wasn't removed, I'd be dead in 6 months. And yet, me with my personality, I made light out of it. I named my tumor Bob. And I'm not sure where Bob came from. I'm assuming from the kids program, like Bob the Builder.
Yeah.
So I named it Bob the Tumor. And so we literally had a huge going away Bob party prior to the surgery. And so we go in finally the morning. The morning was October 28th, 2003 was the day of surgery. I had checked in the hospital the day before, spent the night there preparing. That morning, doctor comes in, he's ready to go. of course, I don't remember this, but my family says, of course, I'm making jokes, asking him, did you eat your Wheaties this morning? And, and stuff. And they end up pushing me through the operating room doors. And my mom and dad had walked with me. My whole family was there, but my mom and dad followed me back. And I had no idea that would be the last time that I would ever see their faces. Because at that time, I like to compare it to people as though my life ended and a new life began.
You know what I've realized?
What's that, Jer?
People think that when the temperatures cool down that you don't need to drink as much water.
Dehydration can happen any time of year. Drinking water is important year-round.
It's easy to stay hydrated with Liquid IV.
Absolutely. Liquid IV is a hydration multiplier. It's a powder and a packet, so you can take them with you wherever you go.
It's an electrolyte mix that you just add to your water. It delivers 2 to 2.5 more hydration than water alone.
So many flavors to choose from too. Grape, tropical punch, guava, passion fruit, strawberry.
Okay. Liquid IV has a ton of flavors. There is something for everyone. If you want your water to work harder for you, you should definitely try Liquid IV.
And for our listeners, if you go to their website, liquid-iv.com, and use code Arner Adventures, you can save 15% and get free shipping.
We'll link it in the show notes too. Liquid IV, fueling life's adventures.
Right.
And the new life that would begin wouldn't be any worse or better than the other life. It would just be different.
Right.
And that came soon after coming out of the surgery. My head was all bandaged up. I forget how many days it was, maybe just only maybe the next day or 2 days after surgery was when my mom was in the room with me. The neurosurgeon happened to be in there. And at the time I was real combative. I kept yanking off one of those little pulse ox machines that they put on like your toe.
Yeah.
Well, said that the neurosurgeon, he's like, Kevin, do you see this? You don't touch it. Do you see this? And my mom said, I said, no, I don't see anything. And at that moment, he looked at my mom and he walked over to the room and he turned on the light switch and he was flipping the light on and off, on and off. He's like, Kevin, do you see this light? I said, no, I don't see anything. It's just black.
Oh.
And it was at that moment that they found out that I was left completely blind.
So it wasn't something that they knew during surgery, oh, this has happened. They found out when you kind of gave them the signal.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Was it ever discussed that it would be a possibility during surgery?
It was during the initial meeting with the neurosurgeon. And when we went over all the possible risks, I always joke, it's ridiculous the amount of things that they tell you can possibly go wrong. Like we might cut off your left toe, but even though we're messing with your head, but,
right.
But going blind was the last one listed at a 1% possibility.
Wow.
Going blind is, of course, the big one, but I also lost my ability to smell. I suffered short-term memory loss for a solid 6 months, stretched on even a little bit longer than that. I started all kinds of medical issues because this brain tumor had completely basically killed off my pituitary gland. Right. And that controls all your body's hormones. And so I ended up, I told you originally that I was supposed to be back to school in 3-4 weeks. Well, I didn't come out I stayed in the ICU for 2 weeks, during which time my family was the ones who were just the amazing superheroes, and that they wouldn't allow the nurses and stuff to strap me down because I was very combative. I was just kind of like out of my mind. And so they literally would take like 30-minute intervals of like 4 people at a time would go in there and stay with me and constantly keeping me from ripping out cords, doing this, doing that. And that went on for 2 weeks. And finally came out of the hospital and then that's when a new life really began for me.
What a great support system, first of all, that your family is. First of all, I can't imagine being your parents or anyone in your family hearing that you can't see, and then you're so look, for good reason, combative and scared and reactionary to all of these things, and then they're saying, okay, gosh, we definitely don't want him strapped down. That would be, I think, a little traumatic seeing anyway.
Yes.
And I think it would be traumatic for you. And then I think for them to say, you know what, we're going to take these shifts, we're going to be here with him, we're going to help hold him down when he's doing that. Like, I mean, that's amazing.
No, I will tell you, I never hesitate to give my family the credit. And I will tell you, even where I am today, some now almost 19 years later, I will tell you that I'm only where I am today because of two things. That's my family and my faith.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that family to be there with me every single day of this journey, there's no way I could do it.
You were talking about, I want to go back to when you said that when you were told you had the brain tumor and then you guys had your party and all of that. So have you always had sort of that great mindset? I mean, were you always just sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, it'll be okay?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, going back to the comment about my faith, is I believe 110% that when I look back at my life now, I can see how every bit of my childhood, so those first 17 years of my life, every bit of it was in preparation for what was to come.
Right.
All the way down to the fact that God gave me a personality that could handle it.
I had someone on the podcast who has gone through a lot of grief and wrote a book about grief. And I was saying to him, when I was really experiencing deep, dark grief, I could not find a resource that was not clinical and that was not written from someone who I felt like got it. And he wrote a book and he gets it. And we were talking about how you don't want to be coached or counseled from someone who doesn't get it.
Yep.
And I feel like having gone through this experience makes you a better coach, a better life coach, a better someone who can better tell someone, look, and I'm not saying you do this. I don't know what your strategy is with coaching. I don't know if you go, look, let me tell you what I've been through. And now, but I would think that it does give you more empathy and allows you to be able to understand where someone has been or what they're going through.
Yeah. Oh, what 110%. And that's exactly it. Is the fact that we're all on our own journey and we're all going through stuff. And for myself, that's exactly what it is with me with coaching or with just being a person in general, is it's made me a more understanding, compassionate person, to realize that when we encounter somebody instead of pushing it off like, oh, wow, what a jerk, or, what's his problem? Instead, maybe think of, wow, what's he going through at home?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, kind of helping to open our eyes to see people in a different way.
You have really experienced life since then. I know that you've traveled a lot and you just said that you see the world differently and through your life experiences. So this is a two-part question. Number one, when did you decide, okay, I am going to continue to live my life to the fullest? And what was the first experience like traveling as a blind person?
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So, to the outside world, after I went blind, people would think, wow, Kevin's like, he's doing great at this. He's handling this great. I mean, I went on to, like I said, that happened the start of my junior year. I never went back to school that whole year. Instead, I had a program called Hospital Homebound, come to my grandmother's house each day. My mom would drop me off. I learned my school subjects. And then, though, I made it back to school for the start of my senior year of high school. ultimately graduated with my class, which was a big accomplishment for me. And so during this time, though, and even in the years afterwards, to the outside world, I'm doing the things, I'm accomplishing a lot. But that's because I never would let people on the outside see the hard times.
Sure.
And, and the people who saw it the most were the ones closest to me, my mom, my sister, my Nana, my dad, who are the ones who, still to this day are the ones who are about the only ones who see the dark days.
Right.
And so it took me a long time, because for a long time in my subconscious, it was, well, I'm going to see again one day. There's no way this is permanent. There's a cure for everything. There's, research going on in China. There's this with stem cells. Yeah. And so in my subconscious, I was buying time until I could see again. Until one day, and gosh, it was a long time. I would say close to about 10 years later was when I really kind of came to this new mindset where I was like, you know what? Just because I choose to keep going and start living and thriving in this life, that doesn't mean, God, that I've given up on hope that you'll heal me again. I've just come to the understanding that it may not be until I'm in heaven. And so I did. It was at that point that my mindset changed, and I thought, so for right now, I'm going to do everything I can to every day live this life to the best of my ability. And if one day God decides to heal me, then that's awesome. But I need to be sure I'm making the most out of every moment until then.
But what would you say would be the first big experience or big travel or place you went that it really experienced life again and said, okay, I can do this?
Yeah, definitely. Well, before I get to that, I would like to share maybe not such a happy moment, but it will help to paint the picture of this evolution of me learning to see life again in a new way.
Yeah,
and soon after I became blind, it was pretty darn recent. After it all happened, we're out on our boat again, and we're down at the inlet, so where the river meets the ocean. Yep. And everyone on the boat starts, oh, dolphins. All of a sudden there was a huge pod of dolphins had literally encircled our boat, and they're jumping and they're coming up and bobbing their heads, and I just started sobbing. Because seeing the dolphins was one of my favorite things when we were out on the boat.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I just remember sitting there just sobbing because I couldn't see them like everyone else. And so that was where that time, that was my life. Sure. Now, several years down the line, I finally got to see dolphins how I can really appreciate them. And it was a birthday present to me, and went up to a place called Marineland, which is up near St. Augustine, Florida, right on the ocean. And I got to do a whole dolphin experience. Where I was in the water with the dolphins and with the trainers. And finally, I got to see the dolphins again.
Oh, gosh.
And
that's amazing.
And that honestly paints the picture for how I would begin to love traveling again, is no longer traveling and looking out the window at the pretty sights, but instead experiencing the world.
Right? And everybody should do that.
Yeah. And so that's it. I don't remember the first big trip we took. I know that I took a lot of cruises during a period of time, and cruising was again one of these amazing things that we had such incredible experiences both on the ship and then at the different ports of call doing excursions and stuff.
Yeah.
And on every cruise I've ever taken, at least one person comes up to me, or generally whoever I'm with, and says, "Oh my gosh, it's so amazing that he comes out on a cruise."
So listen, we're probably not the first to introduce you to the topic of CBD or CBD oil. If you're anything like us, it seems like every time you turn around, you're seeing a neon sign for CBD sold here at your local grocery store, in a window as you're driving by, or it flashes across your screen in an online ad.
Shannon's sister told us about the benefits she was having from a brand she was using, and then we started paying attention to that brand.
Spoiler alert, that brand is Danodan. Full transparency, we get about 2 to 3 CBD brands reaching out to us every week. And it wasn't until we started digging into the research that we learned that CBD isn't always CBD. They're just not all the same.
Danodan HempWorks makes organic hemp flower infusions. They're more than just CBD. Danodan's range of hemp products dissolve easily into any liquid and support your routine by helping you manage daily stress, promote healthy sleep, provide caffeine-free energy, and recover from activity-related stiffness and soreness.
They also have CBD hemp flower infusion specifically designed for pets, and Betty White uses it every day. She loves it. We put it on her food. And with Danodan, you'll enjoy all the benefits of legal hemp, not just 1 or 2 compounds isolated in a lab. Get 20% off right now with the code ADVENTURE at Danodan.com. We'll link it for you in the show notes. That's 20% off right now with the code ADVENTURE at Danodan.com.
Danodan, more than just CBD.
And they're so lost in this mindset of, if you can't see, then what else is there?
Right, that you can't experience.
Exactly. And
Right.
so I can tell you that, myself, when getting off the ship and the different, islands and doing the different excursions and stuff, I am able to see it based on all those other senses. Like, for example, I remember one of the most impactful excursions we ever did was in Puerto Rico. We went into the rainforest.
Yeah.
And did this hike through the rainforest. And the guide actually was so intrigued about me that he instead of letting me walk with my mom, he instead guided me. And so he would stop and he'd point out the sound of the birds and tell me what the birds were. Or he'd jump off the path and pull down a branch for me to feel the leaves and tell me what kind of tree that was.
Oh my gosh, what an experience that
Yes.
must have been.
Yes. And that's what I'm talking about is traveling with this whole mindset of truly, just getting into the destination and meeting the people. I'm famous for, striking up a conversation with the guy driving us from the ship to the destination, because I'm like, and I'm not asking about the tourist stuff. I'm asking him, where on the island do you live? What's life like here?
Oh, that's like my dad. Yeah. I'm like, Dad, okay. But he's the same way, and they love telling him. They love talking about it,
Yeah.
Oh,
so did you just say that I've got an inner old man in me? Is that what you were saying?
You have an old soul.
Yes. Well, I can go with that. Yeah.
We always say, don't worry about all the crap you need to take on your trips because you need to experience it anyway. But I feel like this just even opens my mind up more to, what I need to do more is put down my camera, put down my phone, and go and experience it instead of capturing it so I can look at it later. And
exactly.
Go and feel it. And like you were just saying, I went on an Alaskan cruise recently, and we went through a hike in the rainforest. it was the first time I think I've ever been on a hike or a walk where I wanted to touch things. And it was
Yes.
just, I wanted to feel the dew on the, the
Yes.
leaves, and I wanted to just feel it. And so hearing you experience that in Puerto Rico reminds me of that. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I actually touched those things instead of spending them. And in fact, when we got back to the ship, I said, gosh, I hardly took any pictures. And I was sort of
Yeah.
bummed about it. But then I'm like, why am I bummed? I actually experienced it,
Yes, exactly. I agree 100%.
You kind of have this mindset now that I'm going to experience life, I'm going to see things differently. So, what led you to become a coach and a podcast host? How did you get started into all of that?
Yeah, wonderful. So, well, really piggybacking off of the conversation with travel was back in 2013, I started my own home-based travel agency.
Right.
Yeah, and so I did that from 2013 to 2020, and 2020 going into 2020 was going to be my best year on record.
Sure.
It was going to be incredible. I literally even not only trips for clients, but I had a huge group cruise for me and my entire family set up for that October to celebrate the 17th anniversary of when I had went blind.
Wow.
And I, of course, being Mr. Positive, I viewed it as, how cool is this? I've now been blind as long as I had been able to see. And it happens to be in the year 2020, a number, of course. Yeah. How cool is that? And so that was like super cool until, of course, March of 2020 happened.
Right. Everything shut down.
And so here you have this company that I've built and this brand that I've made, and this life all of a sudden within a week is all disappeared. And so, though, going back to what we said at the beginning is, it's only bad if you can't figure out a way to make good out of it.
I was going to say, I'm sure you pivoted pretty well from that.
Exactly. And so for me, to be honest, as much as I enjoy doing travel and being a travel agent, the truth of the matter is that deep down I knew this wasn't what I was meant to be doing with my life.
Right.
And so I ended up going into, here we are in lockdown during pandemic. And so I had been always thinking about starting a YouTube channel. And so I thought, oh, perfect opportunity. And so I started ordering all the stuff off of Amazon, for doing a YouTube channel, until all of a sudden I'm like, OMG, what are you doing? You're blind. You can't even see. Why are we getting all this film equipment and this? You can't do this on your own. You've got to rely on your sister. And I'm like, Kevin, what have you done? Send it back. Send it back. And so I end up at that point then with my sister, who was like, well, why don't you do a podcast? Well, at the time I wasn't even into podcasts. And so I'm like, I don't know. Like, it seems kind of like a lame alternative to a YouTube channel, but I'll check it out. and so honestly, I did check into it. I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is pretty cool. And so I start listening to podcasts about how to start a podcast, and I go back on Amazon and I start ordering different stuff. And I start the podcast, but at that point I hadn't given up on travel yet. So the podcast was named The Lowdown on Life and Travel, to combine, some of my own life stuff, but then also still trying to keep people's mind into travel during the pandemic. And so I started the podcast. I started doing it. It was going amazing. I kept getting incredible feedback. And the more I did it, the more I'm loving it, the better feedback I'm getting, until finally, kind of going into the end of 2020, people are starting to contact me about travel. Are you doing travel? I'm like, no, I'm too busy. And I'm like, Kevin, I don't think you want to do travel anymore. And so at that point, going into 2021, I rebranded the podcast into what it is now, which is The Lowdown with Kevin Lowe. I would end up totally getting rid of the travel gig. So I sold off my website that I had created to another agent and just let that ship sail away. And
Yeah.
I decided at that moment, if I'm going to book another trip, Kevin's traveling on it.
Good for you.
Yeah. And so that's when I started really full time into the podcast. And then really through the podcast, again, this natural evolution, I kept having these just really incredible deep dive conversations with my guests.
Mhm.
And every guest would tell me at the end of the interview, they'd say, Kevin, they're like, you ask me questions that no one else ever asks me before.
Mm.
Or they say, you see parts of my story that no one else sees. And so it was through that really led me into the realm of coaching.
Yeah.
And so it specifically got into, really finding my niche in coaching with a combination of life and business coaching, helping people who are at that point where they've been through some stuff. They've gone through stuff and they want to make a transition. And maybe whether it's just creating a side hustle or a full-on new, career, and helping them use their past to propel them forward and create like a business of their dreams.
Right.
So yeah.
Wow. I can completely see, and I haven't even known you that long, but just a little bit. But I can completely see just from what you've told me and from what I've read that it's like all of these things were set up for
Yes.
a
Yes.
reason.
Exactly.
For you to help. I mean, I think for you to help people.
Yeah, exactly.
And
100%.
inspire, and through your podcast and your coaching. Well, through all of the things that you've accomplished, which I think are a lot of things, especially with opening your own travel agency business and then having your podcast and your coaching. But it could be those, or it could be other things. What do you think has been your biggest accomplishment in life so far? Look, we got a lot of ways to go.
I think for me, because it was so pivotal, was me graduating high school. So now here I was, a kid who hated school, who I had no big plans about going away to college. I mean, I figured I'd probably go to at least my community college, do the 2-year degree, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have big plans.
Right.
And so wouldn't you have thought that a kid who then has what happened to me in his junior year, let's say I basically was handed a get out of school free card.
Right.
I didn't need to keep going. And yet I had this desire from the very beginning. And my family tells me this, back when I can't even remember. They told me that from the very start, my whole thing was, I just want to still be able to graduate with my class. I want to be able to graduate with my class. And so, and at the time, they secretly didn't tell me this, but they thought there's no way that can happen. Not with all the medical issues that I was dealing with, all that was going on. And yet God placed the people in my life that I needed, the amazing women who were my homebound teachers who came to my Nana's each day that junior year. Yeah. And they helped me catch back up with my schoolwork, while at the same time learning to adapt to this new world by learning Braille, learning how to use a talking computer, learning how to get around with a cane, all of these things, so that then I could get back to school for the start of my senior year. At that point, I just went to class for just the morning. And so at the time, we did like 4 classes a day. And so I went back to school for 1 class a day to help me just be able to be back and quote unquote be part of my senior year. And it allowed me though to opportunities to do stuff with the small group of friends who were still there with me, because I lost most of them, but the few who stuck by my side, were there and helped me, and I got to do stuff, and I got to go to graduation. And I don't think at the time that I realized it until now looking back. And I realize how pivotal it was for me to get to walk across the stage. Because at that moment, God showed me, Kevin, you're still capable of doing great things in this life.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to fight. We're going to have to adapt, but don't give up.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you've given us so many lessons today, but I want to ask you just directly, what lessons do you think that we should all follow to keep appreciating life and have a more meaningful appreciation for life? Like, what nuggets could you give us?
This is what I would say is I would say to look at your life and think of your life as a jigsaw puzzle. And every day of that puzzle is its own piece. And the way that picture, when the puzzle's all put together at the end, is going to be beautiful, is if every piece is beautiful. And the way they're made beautiful is by being sure that you wake up every day with the mindset that, you know what, I'm going to do my best to enjoy this day. I'm going to make the most out of it. I'm going to help people if I can help people. I'm going to thrive if I can thrive despite all that I'm going through. Because even on the bad days when you don't feel good, you're sick, you're down in the dumps, as long as you try your best and you give it your best shot to live, to laugh, to love, I believe that piece of the puzzle is fulfilled. It's beautiful. So that then at the end of the day, you can look back and you can be proud of everything you've done in that life. And what better thing is that?
I mean, right? What better thing is that? That's a great gratitude practice too, to have,
Absolutely.
Oh, gosh. Well, I know that you believe that your faith, that God is the reason, guiding your life path, and that, he is guiding you now. Are there big things coming up for you with the podcast or for your coaching or anything like that?
Yeah, so right now, just the podcast is just continuing to grow, continuing to do amazing. I'm actually at this day of that we're recording, I'm considering a possible rebrand again, again a pivot just to help grow it even more. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but I'm somebody who I'm always open to new opportunities to expand. Always looking for, new doors to open and being sure that, I'm never stuck in one position. And so, so always just continuing to grow the podcast. Like I said, it's just, the podcast is amazing for me as it is for the people who listen, who give me feedback on it, because getting to meet people all over the world and hear their stories, it does me good. And so that's my plans, is continue with it, to continue to grow it. And then, just further, just really just taking the seeds that I've been planting and now really just watering those, giving them some sunshine and making some things really take off.
Right. Well, you have been so gracious in offering our listeners a free breakthrough coaching session, which we're so appreciative. And we're going to link that in the show notes so that if anyone is interested, they can access your Calendly link to get booked. And that's super exciting. And you've also been gracious enough to give our listeners a free download of your visualization exercise. And we will link that's on your website. And can you tell me a little bit about that, the visualization exercise?
Yeah, of course. So this is something that I recorded, I call it like a self-empowering visualization exercise. So basically it's think of it as a podcast, but I'm going to ask you to close your eyes as you listen to it. It's like 10, 15 minutes, and it's me literally taking you through this sensory experience of helping you to choose the right direction and forgetting about the rest.
Oh.
And so it was the first of its kind that I did, and I was happy with the way it turned out, and I've gotten some amazing feedback, because I'll be honest, I felt a little funny recording it at first, but but it turned out really cool. And so again, if if I got to step outside my comfort zone to be able to help somebody, well, then it's worth it. So
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm gonna do that myself. I think that it sounds really interesting, and I appreciate you sharing both of those for our listeners. And like I said, we're gonna put those in the show notes. So as we're wrapping up, we want to go through our fast 5 questions for you.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. So it's just which do you prefer? So the number 1 is, do you prefer the sand between your toes or the snow on your nose?
Ooh. Oh, since I want some cool weather, we'll go with snow on my nose.
Okay. All right. Number 2, sun on your face or the wind on your back?
Ooh, I'll do sun on my face.
Okay. Do you prefer an evening stroll or lying in a hammock?
Ooh, give me a hammock, baby, with a pina colada.
100%. That's my choice. Okay. And then number 4, for travel, do you prefer a plane or a boat?
Ooh, a boat, 100%.
Now talking to you, I knew that's what you were going to say. And then number 5, do you prefer ketchup or mustard?
Well, it's not fair because if it's a hot dog, you have to have both. If it's a hamburger, you have to have both. So you have to have both at the same time.
That's your answer. That's good. I think that's fine. Yeah.
Sounds like a politician.
Okay. And then the most important question that we do ask everyone is, Kevin, what does a life well lived mean to you?
That means exactly what I said earlier, is about that puzzle, is being able to look back and say that, you know what, despite all the hard times, I gave it my best shot. I did what I could, and hopefully I made somebody smile along the way.
Oh, that is the best. And I loved your puzzle discussion earlier. There's always nuggets in these conversations. And I have this Post-it here of all these little nuggets that you've just given. And I think what a wonderful conversation this has been. And I'm so grateful that you took your time to talk to us today. I would love it if before you leave, if you could tell our guests where they can find you and access you for your coaching and your podcast. And of course, we will link it down in the show notes.
Yeah, 100%. So it's all the best place to go is my website. So that's the name, thelowdownwithkevinlowe.com. You can also, if you want to go straight to the coaching page of the site, you can literally just go to kevinlowecoaching.com. And there on the website, I mean, that has all my contact information, form to contact, like you said, whether you're booking a free, a breakthrough clarity call, like was mentioned, or if you just literally just hear this interview today and be like, wow, I have a question for him, or wow, I know somebody who maybe he could help by talking to, please just use the contact form on the site. Reach out to me. That would mean the world to me.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks again for being here. This was wonderful. We really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you. This was so much fun, and you've kind of got me wanting to go travel something fierce. So.
Well, hey, likewise. I feel like I need to get out again. Thank you again. Well, another one. Jared, you've now seen it, and you weren't here for the episode, but now that you have, listened and watched the whole thing, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I was so inspired. What an amazing person.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anything he's going through, but then also just having such a great perception of the entire experience, just knowing that, he was here for a reason and all of it was for a reason. And oh gosh, we have these nuggets of wisdom from these episodes, and I wrote down so many from Kevin's, and I just think what a great line of business for him to go into than coaching. I mean, that's just kind of what he is meant for, I think.
Well, yeah, I think so too. And he might have already had some of that in him. And if he did, boy, I guess it just pushed him to really make the best of it, his experience. And what else can you do with an experience that probably wouldn't make sense to a lot of people, but just try to how do I come up with something good out of this? And he really has. One of the things that really inspired me so much in all this was the send-off party for Bob.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Bob, his tumor, and having a send-off party.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever heard of naming. I mean, they did. They named the tumor. And
you and I have both had surgeries. And you think about it. He had that surgery when he did not know that it was going to cause him to be blind, right?
oh, yeah.
Still a very scary surgery.
Right.
You and I have had scary surgeries.
Yeah.
Definitely not brain surgery.
No.
But you and I have had things removed.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I wish I would have had a send-off party and named different things, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Just a great way of looking at it.
Alan the appendix. I mean, I never thought of it at the time, but man.
Felicia the fibroid. Bye, Felicia.
Oh boy.
Well, listen, we did talk about the things that Kevin offers for our audience. We're going to link those down in the show notes, the breakthrough coaching session, as well as the visualization exercise, which Derry and I are going to do. And I just think, how generous of him to offer those things. And we're going to put all of it in the show notes, all of his information. And if this episode resonated with you, or if you know of someone who would benefit from any of the information that Kevin was sharing, please screenshot it, share it, send the link to your friend,
Sharing is caring, friends.
As always, you can find us at ArnerAdventures.com, on Instagram at ArnerAdventures, also linked in the show notes.
So until next time, enjoy the journey that you're on. We're wishing you lots of adventures.
Bye.